It's Rob Jan Webb, it's Waxadisc Music, and this tutorial is how I mix my 909 drums. Now, I was asked recently to do a tutorial on mixing, so I thought I would do one, for it's the first time in a long time that I've done one. And basically, I'm going to show you how I mix my 909 drums for my most recent release, which came out on Victor Simonelli's label, Big Big Tracks in New York. It was a techno sort of old school house track, and this version here is the acid dub mix. I've taken away all the musical elements, which there are only 4, and I've just left you with the drums, and I'm going to mix the drums. I'm going to show you how I've mixed the drums so that it gives you guys more clarity and a little bit more insight into how to mix drums, because it's one of those things where people kind of get bogged down with and they spend hours agonizing over various sounds, various EQ measures and all that kind of thing. Mixing a track, right? Mixing a track, there is no right or wrong way of doing it. We all have our own style, our own technique, our own tools, and our own way of doing it, right? It's exactly the same as getting 10 painters to all line up and look at a scenery, and they'll all paint the same scenery, but they'll all do it in an exactly different way, even though they've all got the same tools and the same paint. It's the same with mixing. We all have the same tools, but we just use them in different ways, and we chop and change things around. So this works for me, right? So if it works for you, great, learn from it. But if you don't, that's fine. If you're going to say to me, oh, that ain't right, or this ain't right, well, that may be in your world. But in my world, this works for me. This track's been released. It's out there. It's done. And that's it. There's probably 10 million ways to do it better. There's probably other ways to do it, you know, louder, whatever. This works for me. So let's crack on and I'll show you what I've done. Okay, so as you can see here on the channel, I have got the track up, and you can see that I'm just going to minimize the drums. I've got 4 musical elements: sub bass, pure minor synth, rotor violin synth, and the acid. And that's it. That's a sidechain mute kick, a ghost kick. And then I'll drop the drums down in the group channel. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drum elements: a kick, a ride, an open hat, which might be a closed hat in there as well on that same channel, I think. Yeah, there is. So 2 hats, a clap, and a snare and a crash. It's that simple. Everything is a 909 except the kick. I wanted a much beefier kick than the 909. I just had one that works better with the track. So I'm going to show you how I mixed it. It's going to be very short, very sweet. Let's just get to the point, cut to the chase, okay? No jargon. Right, so I'm going to go back over to the session view, and you can see I've grouped my drums here. I'm going to play you the track just to give you a bit of insight into it, okay? And it goes like this. And then there's a bit of acid here. And that's it. It's a hard-hitting sort of old-school track, and I'm going to break it down for you now. So we're forgetting the musical elements of all that. We're just going to turn them off completely, so we're not going to use them as such. Right, back to session view, and open up the drums, and we can see all the elements there, the 6 elements there, okay? The kick that I've used is from within the Ableton stock, so I think it is, and it's called FE2 Kick 4. Really hard-hitting kick. Real power behind it. And as you can see, if I take off the EQ, take the compressor off, it's really flat. So put some EQ on it. Just gives it that punchy bounce. And all I've done, look, is I've turned channel 1 off. I've not even curved it off at the end, which is a lot of people would do that. Not on this instance, I haven't. I've put 2 there, about 45 hertz. Dipped number 3 into the gap there, look. So if I solo the kick on its own, got that kind of dip in there, and I've raised the top a bit so that it gives it a little bit of the resonance, a bit of the spacey, because I don't want the kick to be dull, you see. And then I've got this free compressor here called the Klanghelm compressor, and I've just turned it up just on the makeup, just to about just there, look, just 1 above the 0, and it just gives it that loudness that I want, just a tiny bit, and that's all I've done to the kick. Okay, so the ride. Next up is the ride. Okay, so the ride, the 909 ride, as you can see here, like this, look. I'm going to play it naturally. You can hear it in its full attack. It just acts like a crash in a sense. It's just bang, 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 bang. There's no dip or no cut off in it. The EQ, all I've done is turned off number 1, turned off number 2, made number 3, come around here at about 400. You don't want it to lose all that echoey sort of spaciness in it, you know, that kind of decay in it. You want it to kind of, but what I've done is in certain parts of the track, I've connected it to the muted kick to give it a sidechain dip. So it goes like this. It just really dips. And it just helps with the mix. So when you've got a busy part of the track here where I've got the acid, for example, it just helps take away that you know. So I've muted it, I've added it to the muted kick, to the ghost kick if you like, and given it that sidechain dip. So that's all I've done with the ride. And in terms of pan, I've left it naturally. Next up are the open hi-hats, straight up, two closed and one open. And again, with the EQ, I've just taken away number 1, curved number 2 up round here, look, number 4, brought out the brightness. Take it off, it's dead dull. And that's all I've done there, so put it on with the kick. And that is that. That's all there is to it. Okay, so next up then is the clap. Again, all I've done is taken out the bottom end, turned off number 1, risen number 3 to around 1.47 and about 2.60 on there. So if I take it off, dead dull, as you would expect. Brighten it up on the top end and pan it 11 o'clock to the left. And then the snare, again, brighten the snare up, but this time I've taken 1 off, curved number 2 on a low pass to around 20 hertz, risen the third one in the middle, in the mid-range bit, and risen it number 4 to get that fizzy sort of punch out of it. Natural. And there you go, and that's it. And panned it slightly to the right at about 1 o'clock against the clap. So the claps and the snare go the opposite way. And then the last one is just the crash. The crash is just one of the easiest things to do. I don't know why I've used a fab filter on this and not on the others. God knows what happened. However, it's exactly the same process as an EQ8. Cut all the bottom end out. Take it off. You can hear all that muddiness in the un-EQ'd version. Take all the bottom end out, bring it right in, rise up at the top end of it, just give it that clear, crisp sort of sound. You don't want a dull 909 unless you're making really heavy techno. But I just put on a brighter EQ. So back to the session view, and if you look at the drums, I've grouped them all now, all the grouped, closed the group, and then on the group I've stuck another compressor, turned the makeup up to about 4 or 5, turned the compression up to 6 on there, and I've put another EQ on, just slightly rising up the bottom end and the top end. Take them off. That's the EQ'd version, compressed version with the extra EQ. And there you go. And dropped it to -6 on the master channel so that when I bounced it, it had 6 decibels for the mastering to take place. And that is how I mix my 909 drums, or my house drums in general. Very little EQ, very little processing. I don't believe in massive amounts of processing. I think that it holds a lot of people back. And just a slight bit of panning on the claps and the crash, obviously, and the snare. You don't have to spend hours and hours agonizing over drums. People do, and they spend hours and hours, and then it breaks the momentum and they stop releasing music. So just do very basic mix downs of your track, but give them as much power as you can. As you can see also, I put some reverb and some delay on the sends here, lot from the aux channels, from the bus channels. On the claps there's some reverb, and on the crash there's a bit of delay and reverb, and then reverb on the ride and the open hats. So I've not put any on the kick. or on the snare, for example. I think the snare's kind of got a bit of sort of reverb on it anyway. It's an echoey sort of, it's got that little bit on there anyway naturally, so I don't believe I need to add any to that. So that is it. That's all I've done on that channel, on that track. And yeah, take from it what you will. Thank you for watching. See you soon.